Welcome to Office 2010 video number 42. Hey, this video we're going to see how to create an Access database and import and create tables. Now here's our jump drive. We're going to go to our Highline folder and down to Access. We just want to make sure that we have some files. We want to make sure we have data for wooden crafts, which we are not going to open, and wooden craft steps, which we are going to open. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. This is the description of what we're going to do. This project involves creating a database. And as we know, a database stores raw data, and then we create information from that raw data. So imagine that we are a small kiosk in a mall, and we sell wooden toys. We're going to build a small basic database with a table for the products that we sell and how much they cost, how many we have on hand. And we're going to have a table for the suppliers that we buy the wooden toys from. We will create a new database, create the tables. We know tables are the heart of any database, so we have to do that first. And then we'll create a form, enter the raw data. We'll create a bunch of queries, and then we'll create some reports. All right, now we need to open up, do step 1, create a database. I'm going to click on my little Access shortcut on my taskbar, or go to Start Menus, Programs, Microsoft, and then find your Access. Now, first, and this is real different than Word and Excel, we have to create a blank database. So you click here. Now, normally in Word and Excel, if you click a blank, a new workbook or document, it just opens up and you can start working without saving. But not with the database. You have to save it first. So I'm going to come over here. And guess what? Here it is. Here's the file name. I'm going to highlight database1. And I'm going to type wooden crafts with no spaces. .ac for access, db for database. Look at this. That's the browse button. Can you believe how small it is? Why didn't they have that big browse button that says browse on it? But I'm going to click on this. You have to tell it where to save before you start working in it. Remember last video, we saw that we can actually enter raw data live, and it's automatically saved. So a database has to know where it is first before we can do anything. So I'm going to click in this folder here. There's our name. When I click OK here, it's actually not going to save it yet. I have to click this Create button. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, create. And now we have our wooden crafts database. Now I think if you do this on most computers, I'm going to close this table. The close button's over here. It'll have like this big ribbon up here that says Enable Content. And so you have to click that. Now, we have no objects over here. We saw in the last video we're going to talk about tables, queries, forms, and reports. We have no objects. The table is the heart of the database. So we have to create some tables, enter some raw data before we can start doing stuff. And really, creating the tables and the field properties and data validation for the tables is really one of the bigger tricks that we're required to do. Now, first, I want to import some data. So I'm going to go not to the create, but the external data. Now, in the textbook, it's great. They show you how to import some Excel files, which, of course, is common when people move up to a database. You know, they've been keeping stuff in Excel. So it's easy. You just click this button and import. So in the book, you do that. Here, we're going to import something from Access. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to navigate to our class notes. Whoops, that's the wrong drive. It's the L, Highline, Winter, Business 216, class notes. So for Excel, if you're importing Excel, you have to navigate and then click on the workbook. Here, we're going to click on the database. So I'm going to click this. There it is. Click OK down here. It's showing us the tables. You can import other types of objects too. We're going to import these tables. So I'm going to click on both of them. In the Excel dialog box, you will see sheets and sometimes define names, and you just click on them. I'm going to click OK. We could save this if there was going to be if we wanted to access this again, but we don't. We're importing this data, and we're basically never going to use those databases again because this is going to become the database. I'm going to close this, and there are our tables. We have 2 objects. Now, before we get started, make sure that we're in object type and all access. Let's just look at one. Ah, there it is. This is our supplier data table. But this is a table. Our supplier code is our unique identifier. First name, last name, address, city, state, zip, and telephone. All right, so this is our supplier table. I'm going to close this. Why is it saying, do you want to save? Because we made a structural change. I changed the column width. So I'm going to click Sure. Now, where do we go to create? Create. We have to create a table. Now, before we do that, I want to go over to our handout in Word. And there's screenshots in this handout and some minimal notes. But this page, page 3, quite important. This is going to tell us where our raw data is. There's our raw data. And here, this is going to tell us what field names we have. So for example, we're going to have product ID, description, on-hand cost, selling price, and supplier code. The data type, we're going to have to tell each field whether it's text, a number, currency, etc. The description, and then down here we will have some what are called field properties. So for example, here's product ID. Oh, here's the product ID field. Here's the raw data. But notice something about this raw data. Our convention is 2 uppercase letters and then 2 numbers. This is going to be our unique identifier. So every time we sell a new toy or a new wooden toy, we're going to create a unique identifier. So there's no duplicates in our products table. So for midget railroad, we said MR06. That'd be cool to have a little wooden set midget railroad. So there's our product ID. Now let's go down here. We're going to have, these are called field properties. What's a field? This is a field. We talked about this over in Excel. A field is the column header and then all the elements in this field. Well, what is a property? Well, it looks like they're always 4 characters long, right? It also looks like we always have capital letters. Well, look at this. When we get to the underside creating the table, we're going to have to say, hey, what's the field size? 4. Format, I know this is weird. Greater than, so what does that mean? This is actually code. It's not like a comparative operator we learned back in Excel. It actually says for this field, always make small letters big. So no matter what you type in up here, if you type little b, little f, it'll pop up to capital letters. And then one other point from this note, these notes here, cost. One of our rules for data going into this field here is that we're never going to buy something over $500, and obviously nothing's ever going to be negative. So guess what? Here's the cost field. We're going to say data type currency. We're going to give it a description of cost of product. But now we're in the field properties. We're going to say, what is the validation rule? It means, a validation rule means what kind of true-false rule can we create for the cost field so that you enter the right data? Well, for us, it's going to be greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 500. This and means that both of these conditions have to be true for the thing you're typing into the field to get entered. If you type in a negative number, it's not going to let it into the field. If you type a number greater than 500, not going to let it into the field. You can see none of these numbers are below 0, and none of them are greater than 500. Now, the and just means that these simultaneously have to be true. This is a true-false test. It says greater than or equal to 0, true, and it also the number also has to be less than or equal to 500. True, true, true. So and means both must be true. Not only that, but you'll get to have some fun. When we get into the field properties, you'll get to actually type a message in that'll pop up in a dialog box if they violate the rule. All right, so let's go over to Access, and we got to get busy creating a table. We go to the Create ribbon tab. We're going to create the table in design view. We will also later, when we create queries, we will create in design view. So I'm going to click table, boop, and there it is, this weird view that we saw last video, kind of disconcerting the first time you see it. But let's create one or two fields, and we'll see if it can be less disconcerting. Like I said in the last video, I still remember the first time I switched over to Design View in FileMaker Pro in the early 90s. I was just like, what? I don't understand this at all. I actually ended up hiring a consultant, Chris Walcott, who came in and helped me create my database. Actually, for that matter, Steve Kavanaugh was a consultant that came in and helped me learn Excel, because I was totally, in the early 90s, didn't know anything about computers. Boy, was that a turning point in my life. All right. The first field name is going to be product ID, right? So we're looking here. Oh, yeah, product ID, boom. So I'm going to type over here. And unlike the notes, it has a space. I'm not going to include a space. I'm just going to type product ID. Now, one thing about typing field names, if you spell it wrong here, you better spell it wrong everywhere else too, because this is in essence what it's going to allow our database to talk. Right? The table has to talk to the form, has to talk to the query, has to talk to the report, as we saw in the last video. So be sure and spell it the way you want. Now, you can change it, but it's always a hassle. Now, data type. This is our first experience with actually, unlike in Excel where we could just type a field name and start entering data, here we have to say what type of data goes into this column. And this is really great, because that means we can limit. If it's text, we can say text. If it's number, we can say number. And you will be disallowed from entering data types that doesn't match this data type. Now, let's look through this list. Text is when you have words, or when you have a zip code or telephone number or social security number that looks like a number, but you'll never do a calculation on. So text, it's going to be something like a word. Memo is the data type when you're going to type a lot, like some sort of message or detailed memo into a field. Number, this is when you have numbers in the column. And this is very important. And this is a common mistake. Later we'll create units field. And if you enter units field and have text as the data type, when you go to do a calculation, like a formula like we did in Excel, it won't work, because text is not allowed to do calculations. So number, if it's a number that goes in this field. Date and time, if there's date and time. Currency, that means it's a number you can do calculations and it will be formatted. Auto number, that means as you add new records, it will auto increment. Yes and no, this is a data type like if you have a personal database with addresses and telephone numbers, and then you are going to add a field to say, I sent this person a wedding invitation, yes or no. Object linking and embedding, you can link other objects. I don't think we'll do that in this class. Hyperlink, attachments, calculated, we'll do our calculations over in queries. And then Lookup Wizard. This will be awesome. We'll do this when we get to our supplier code. The Lookup Wizard means you can look into another table and get data, or you can type some data in, and we'll do 2 Lookup Wizards, 1 of each. All right, product ID, that's just text. Tab, and even though there's some numbers here, forget it. We're never going to be adding or multiplying something like this or like this, so that's always going to be text. All right, description. I'm going to type product ID, and then I'm going to type unique identifier. I hope I spelled that right. Yeah, this is the primary key. I'm going to type that too. Now, what is a primary key? We've talked about this a few times. It means this is the field that duplicates will not be allowed, right? So we never want, if we look over here at MR6 Midget Railroad, we don't want multiple entries for Midget Railroad. There has to be only one. And so the unique identifier, primary key, that will do it. As soon as you do this, it makes this no duplicates. Oh, but typing primary key won't do it. You actually have to click here and click on the primary key button, or right click primary key. Oh, and then there's a primary key. That says, hey, in this field, no duplicates allowed. This is the one that is the unique identifier. Now, let's save this table. I'm just going to Control S. You can see right over here there's no tables yet. Here's the Save As dialog box. I'm going to type products. Now, what's nice about objects, and let's click OK, and we can see we have products table. Later, we'll have a form called products. Now, duplicate names for objects is OK because, right, a table and the form related to the table probably should be called the same thing, and they'll be different, but they'll be different objects. All right, now let's think about this. OK, so we entered a field name, data type, which is a form of data validation and description. But what's this? Down here, these are called field properties. Field properties are a type of data validation. For example, we noted over here in our Word document that there's 4 characters. So for field size, we can just say 4. Now, we also noted over here that they always have to be capital. And if someone types in a little b and a little f, we want them to become capital. So under Format, we can type a greater than symbol. Ooh, that's kind of weird, right? Over in Excel, we used it as a comparative operator. But here, it's like this weird code we have to type into the format field property text box. Now, let me show you a great trick here. I sometimes, or most of the time, forget what the code is. I'm going to type an input mask. Input mask is kind of like number formatting over in Excel. It's what we see on the surface. I'm going to click there and hit the F1 key. Now, this is Microsoft Help, right? So F1 is help. Usually help doesn't work so well, but watch this. Because my cursor was the input mask, boom, it jumps right there. And you can look this up for yourself. There is a list of all this code. Now, I can't get this to zoom. But there it is, right there. You can see the greater than symbol says K causes all characters to be converted to uppercase. There's also a couple other interesting ones for our particular situation. L, big L, means letter. A to Z, entry required. Also 0, digit, 0 to 9, entry required. So we're going to go back over here. I'm going to close this. Anytime you get lost, you just click there in F1. I'm going to type LL00. Okay, so the 4 says only 4. The greater than makes them all capital. The LL says the first 2 characters have to be letters, and 00 says the last 2 characters have to be numbers. I'm going to save this just for kicks. Now I saved it, Control S. Now let's go test this. Test this and see if this actually works. Remember, we have a toggle here, so we can. Oh, I guess I didn't. I don't know. What did I hit? Control A? No, I don't know what I hit. Well, I'm going to save it now. Notice it's polite. I thought I Control S's, but it's polite. It reminds me, hey, you better save this first. I'm going to click yes. Notice it's a toggle. So as we create it, we can go out and test it or see how it looks. So now I'm going to, with just one field, I'm going to type numbers. Because remember, we have to have 2 letters first. That doesn't work. I'm typing 2. Now I'm going to type ER. And then I'm going to type RRR. So we could see the first 2 letters. The LL says it's required, so it's there. Now I'm going to type 2 numbers. So it looks like it's working. Now I'm going to try and type some extra numbers. OK, so the LL said you have to have 2 letters. The 00 said you have to have 2 numbers. And I tried to type more, but the field size of 4 prevented that from happening. Now I'm going to hit Tab. Notice now the greater than symbol comes in. It pops up to ER. Now I'm going to actually delete this. I'm going to right-click Delete Record. It says, what are you, crazy? Yeah, I'm going to delete that. All right, now let's go back under here and let's create our next record. This is going to be description. Tab, and description is going to be text. Tab, and I'm going to say description of product. And then we're going to come down here. I used to know the keyboard shortcut for jumping from here to here. I think it's F6. Oh, look at that. It still works. I'm going to limit this to 25. Now, I definitely remember my first database I ever used, FileMaker Pro. I'd be so frustrated because I'd try to type more characters than were allowed, and I had no idea how the database worked. If only I knew just to go underneath to design views and change this. But there it is, 25. Now, F6 will jump back up. I guess it doesn't. It jump back over there. So I don't know where. So all I know is F6 can jump down. So I'm going to click back up here. Our next field is on hand. And this is the one that I always spell wrong. I always spell hand incorrectly. If I spell it wrong here, I better spell it wrong everywhere else. So I'm going to backspace. I'm going to make sure. Okay. On hand is how many of the products we have in stock. Tab. Now, text, we know that we looked at this. If on hand is ever going to be used in a calculation, which it is for us, we're going to calculate inventory value. Don't leave it text or memo. Leave it number. Now, I'm going to hit escape. With this drop down, once you get the hang of it, you can just type the number N, and then it automatically pops up. Tab. And I'm going to type number of units on hand. Now, come down here, F6 or click. And this is a number, so it has a slightly different set of choices here. I have a little, this is in the textbook, and it also is downloadable. There's a workbook called Access Notes. But here it is, byte, numbers 0 to 255. Integer, a long integer, that's the default oftentimes. If you want decimals, then you should put decimals. I think this is the one that shows up in our drop down. I'm going to Alt-Tab back here. Decimals, so decimals. Oh, I'm sorry. Escape, escape, right here. And there's decimal down at the bottom. Now, if you leave it integer and enter decimals, it'll just hack them off. But no problem. On hand can only be an integer. So we're going to leave it long integer. All right, let's go to our next one. On hand. Now let's do cost. And we're going to have a little fun with this one. Tab. Now I could leave it number, but I don't want that because I want some formatting. So I'm going to type C for currency. Thus, the currency drop down right there. It means we can do calculation, and it will have some formatting. Tab. Price we paid, right? That's the cost, different than the price we're going to charge the customer. All right, currency. Oh, there's the format. Decimal places auto, right? That's going to help us because, of course, it's built in when you're using currency that we're going to have pennies. All right, let's do our, oh, sorry. In this field, notice when we click back over here, this goes away. You can click in any one of these and adjust the field properties as you go along. Now, cost. By the way, caption is a good one to do also. They talk about this in the book. Right now, it's the field name is cost. But on reports, if you're going to have this listed as something different, for example, you want this in your database to say cost, but if you want it to say something different on a report, then you type caption there. Default value, you could put that there. We're going to talk about validation rule, and we actually already looked at this over in our this one here. Validation rule. Oh yeah, we're going to prevent numbers less than 0 and greater than 500 going in, and we're going to have a pop-up message that will warn people that we made a mistake. All right, so the validation rule, I'm going to type greater than or equal to. Again, there's no single character for greater than or equal to, just like over in Excel. Greater than or equal to 0. Notice the less than symbol and the equal sign are pointing to the 0. So always remember the blank side is pointing towards the thing in the field. And less than or equal to 500. Now, don't type any dollar signs here. because they won't work. All right, now I'm going to hit Tab. And our message. Now this is the validation text. You can put anything here. And when you first do this, you should put something funny like, hey, don't do that, or something just to make it memorable. I'm going to type something boring here. Enter amount between, and now I am going to put a $sign because this is a label in essence, or a dialog box. All right, so I put something boring there, but definitely put something funny there the first time you do this, because you're the one defining what the dialog box that pops up says. There it is, right there. All right, I'm going to Control S. Let's go test this. We'll make a mess around and then delete the record. All right, I'm going to type HH66 tab. Okay, that one's working. Description. I'm just going to type thing, even misspelled. On hand, I'm going to say 5. Now, if we type a decimal here, remember we had long integer. If I hit a decimal like this and hit Tab, it's just not going to let that decimal in, because our data type we selected number, and then our field property we selected long integer. Now cost, just for kicks, I'm going to type. So it's 20.2. Notice I didn't type in a $sign or the extra 0, but when I hit Tab, then of course the formatting kicks in. Now let's test this data validation. I'm going to type -5, Tab. Oh, there it is. There's our groovy little dialog box. Enter amount between 0 and 500. I hope you typed something funny, right? All right, now I'm going to type 5,000. Really, it just says, what are you kidding? You're in charge of buying and you didn't read your contract? You're never allowed to enter a number in here that's greater than 500. Oh, okay, so we see that everything's working. Our data validation, really quite awesome that our database we're building, we're putting data types, field properties that make sure the right type of data are stored in our database. Now I'm going to delete this record, right-click Delete, and then click Yes. All right, now let's go back under. So always, you just, as you're building your objects, click back and forth, check it as you go along. All right, our next, okay, so our next one, oh, this is going to be selling price or sell price. I think in the handout I call this selling price, but that's okay. Let's type a tab and then C for currency. And then price we charge. And we're going to leave everything here the same. Next one. OK, so now we need to do supplier code. Now I'm going to save this, Control S, close this, go over to supplier data. Let's just remind ourselves. This field right here, I'm going to Control S because I just changed the structure. That field right there is called supplier code. And these are the only values we want to allow over in this table. Now, we have all this data here. You would never put the name, the last name, the telephone number, for example, I'm going to close this, over here. So you wouldn't have the actual product we bought and then repeat that data over here. All we have to do to connect this table to this table in case we ever need to ask a query of both tables is to put that supplier code ID. Now I'm going to open this supplier. This is the primary key in the supplier data table, right? There is only allowed one AP in this table. I'm going to close this. But over here, we may buy 10 products from a particular supplier. So we're allowed to repeat that supplier code many times. This is going to be called, when we link the tables with a relationship, there'll be a one-to-many relationship. But let's just think, for this table, if we're going to have a field right here called supplier code, I don't want to ever enter any supplier code, which is a 2-character product ID. I don't ever want to enter a value in this table that's not actually over in this table. So we're going to go underneath, and when we create this field, we're going to call it supplier code. I can see that I include the supplier code field name over here had a space, but that's okay. We could still connect them. I'm not going to put one here. But supplier code, we need to connect this. So tab. And then way at the bottom, oh, so cool, Lookup Wizard. It'll look up into another table. Now, I want the lookup field to get the values from another table. Yes, I will type values in that I want. This one is great if you have, for example, wholesale or retail, or some other very simple kind of option of two things you want. You would select this and then type the values in. All right, so I definitely want this field to look into another table, so I'm going to click Next. It's looking at our database. It's asking us, hey, which table do you want? I want supplier data. Which field do we want to connect? Supplier code. So I'm going to go boop. That little arrow we'll see a few other times here. You're allowed to take it and put it over here. This is the only one we want. Next. You can sort it or not. It doesn't particularly matter, ascending or descending. Next. And there it is. There's our little preview of what our drop down will look like. We're going to have a drop down now. So every time we enter in the products table, we click in this field in our form, we're going to have an option for a drop down that'll show us these values. Next. Label. This is fine. We can have this label. Enable data integrity. We definitely want to do that. Restrict delete, cascade delete. We actually don't talk about this in this class, but I'm not going to click this, but cascade delete means if we delete a supplier, it would automatically delete all the toys over here. I'm not going to select that. Allow multiple values. No, we're not going to select that. I'm going to click Finish. Oh, the table must be saved before relationship can be created. So there's relationships between tables. That's one of the main advantages of a database, relational databases. We can tell this field to look over to that field. I'm going to click Yes. Code of supplier from I'm going to say lookup to. So I just want to make sure that, because notice, what, text? Well, it's considered text, but I just want to put a note over here to make sure that whoever looks at this database later knows that that's looking up to that other table, code of supplier. All right, I'm going to Control S. Now, just to show you how it's done, I want to do another lookup and type in two values. Now, for us, we're going to be selling wooden toys. But occasionally, we'll have a stock of toys that we only sell to other stores. And so that will be a wholesale item. Everything else will be retail. Just to show you how this is done, a small store, a small kiosk in a mall probably would never sell wholesale, but let's do it anyway because I'll show you how this feature works. So I'm going to say hopefully I spelled all that right. Lookup Wizard. And I'm going to say I'm going to type the values I want. Next. And I'm just going to type them wholesale or retail tab wholesale. Now, one disadvantage to doing this, right, is we're typing in two values. That's it. We're stuck with two values. If you do a lookup to another table, that table is dynamic. You can expand and contract the table, and our drop-down list will expand and contract. All right, now I'm going to click Next. That's a fine name. I'm going to click Finish. I put internal table, meaning it's just something we typed in. All right, Control S. Now, I think our table is done. Let's make sure selling price, yep, supplier code. Let's see. It's got the 2 because in that other table. The we don't, it's fine. We'll leave it. Everything is looking good. I'm going to Control S. Now, let's just do one more test, and then we'll actually create a form and enter some raw data. I'm going to click right here. Or actually, we'll do that in another video. But right now, this is the big test. I do want to enter the official record. This is the first record in the table. I'm going to type little b, little f. I'm going to try numbers first. Those don't work. Little b, little f, and then FFF. Okay, so that's working. 01, 1111. So everything's working there. When I hit Tab, even the greater than symbol is working. Okay, so our first product is Barnyard Friends. So BF01. Barnyard Friends. Tab 3. I'm going to type 3.2. Okay, that is working there. It hacked off the decimal. 27. I'm going to type 5,000. Okay, I'm going to click OK. And then the actual price for this is 27. Notice I'm not typing the dollar sign, the decimal, or the 00. Selling price is 50. Wow, if you're a kiosk, that's not even double. That's not even 100% markup. It's hard for a small business to live on only 100% markup. All right, so we have that. Not true for big companies, of course, but for a small company, usually their markup's pretty big. To stay in business, you have to. All right, now let's check this out. And there it is. Look at that. I'm going to type ER. Oh, actually, no, this one's SC. Tab, and then this one, everything's going to be retail. I just wanted to show you that that does work. All right, now I'm going to close this. Oh, I didn't. Oh, man, I forgot to save. No problem. Tables automatically save. All right, that is how to create your database and create a table. In our next video, we will edit our relationships. And the video after that, we'll create a small form and enter some raw data. All right, see you next video.